purpose of a small business like yours or mine or the ones I work with is to give its owner the life they want, which often the exact reverse of that happens. They get so wrapped around the axle of their business that it takes over their life. So the first part of that question is, what do you want from life? What would you love your life to look like? And then how do we design life and ultimately your business so it gives that to you? So the answer to your question is very different for everyone, but the principle is the same. Let's design business so you get the life you want.
You're listening to the Happy Productive Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Dawn, business coach and founder of Freedom Builders. If you're ready to slow it on down and stop grinding, do the inner work that makes outer success inevitable, and build a soul-aligned, not soul-sucking, business and life that feel amazing and overflow with ease and joy and happy productivity, you're in the right place. If you'd like to learn more, just hop on over to my website, jenniferdawncoaching.com. That's it. Let's get into today's episode. Hey, everybody, it's Jennifer Dawn. Welcome to a new episode of the Happy Productive Podcast. I think you're going to really enjoy this conversation today. My special guest is John. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're so excited to jump into this conversation. And you guys, so John was the former president and CEO of BC Liquor Stores, which is a $3 billion company, B with a capital B. So I know I have everybody's attention right now and you're listening. And this is one that you definitely want to tune in and listen to. But John, would you mind just giving everybody a little bit of your story and how you came to, well, be the CEO of a $3 billion company and then doing the work that you're doing now?
Well, I've been a business coach since 2004, so that's about 22 years. But the other answer, which is also true, is all of my life. It was Steve Jobs who said you can only connect the dots going backwards. And about 6 months after starting coaching, I woke up one day with a bit of an epiphany and realized, oh my gosh, I've always been a coach. And I'll take a minute to unpack a few of those connections or those dots. I'm the eldest of 8 children, so you can imagine you get cast in a certain role pretty early in life. I'm hardwired to be a teacher, and I knew that in high school, but in those days that meant wearing a Harris tweed coat with elbow patches, and that bureaucratic style of teaching didn't appeal to me very much. In the early 80s, I was blessed to learn something called the Socratic method of leadership. So Socrates had it, the best way to help somebody is to help them figure it out for themselves. And I've been practicing that style of leadership since the early 80s. And in fact, that's really what coaching's about at its core. And so that's in essence what I do. I started business life at a national menswear retailer, sales guy on the floor. Ultimately, I was an executive in Toronto. After 5 years, I decided I really didn't want to live in Toronto anymore, and I got myself headhunted, and that's how I came back to the west coast of Canada and joined the BC Liquor Stores.
Wow. I was just in Toronto last week, John, and I gotta tell you, the traffic made me want to jump off a bridge because it took me like an hour and a half to go a mile. And I was like,
painful.
What am I doing? Like, this is insane.
Sure. Yeah. Where I live, traffic is about as bad. One of the things I enjoy a lot about living in Scottsdale is they have an entirely different view of even street level roads, major roads. They're 50, 60 miles an hour, lights every mile or so, and traffic flows. And it's one of the great joys. And then I come back here and it's, oh yeah, I remember now.
Oh, I know. I was born in Kingman, Arizona, which is northern Arizona.
Sure.
Sedona is one of my favorite places on earth, but every time I'm visiting, it's just like a grid, and it's every mile, and it's just so easy to navigate. And so I hear you. It's like this crazy traffic in the Northeast is just that. It's crazy.
Well, when you start with a big flat desert, area constraints or space constraints aren't the same, whereas in the places we're talking about, there are geographic conditions that cause constraints.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, John, I would love to hear, we're here on Happy Productive, and I would love to hear, what does happy productive mean to you?
Well, I work with small business owners, so they're typically $1, $2, $3, $4 million kinds of businesses. And I have a definition that the purpose of a business like that and I'm going to give you kind of a counterintuitive answer. What's the purpose of a small business? And, if you're a $100 million business or you got a board or shareholders, the answer is going to be a little different. But ultimately, the purpose of a small business like yours or mine or the ones I work with is to give its owner the life they want, which often the exact reverse of that happens. They get so wrapped around the axle of their business that it takes over their life. So the first part of that question is, what do you want from life? What would you love your life to look like? And then how do we design life and ultimately your business so it gives that to you? So the answer to your question is very different for everyone, but the principle is the same. Let's design business so you get the life you want.
Oh, I love that. I hope you guys really, really heard that for a second. The purpose of your business is to give you the life you want. And then let's get clear on the life you want. Now, I know some people listening are going, their brains just went, oh, I don't really know what I want. And so what happens, John, when somebody says, you know what? I don't really know what I want. How do you help them to answer that question?
The metaphor I like to use is think about some of those movies we've seen of Vietnam, and soldiers are being dropped from helicopters into that swamp grass, and the grass is kind of blowing around like that, and they're in the middle of the grass and they can't really see anything, and they're wondering which direction should we go. So in that moment, you can't make a choice, and it's really hard. I don't know what I want. Well, you have to get to 10,000 feet. Let's figure out what you want it to look like in 3 years. And then it becomes easier to get back in the swamp grass and figure out, oh, I know what I'm ultimately trying to achieve and what I should be doing today to get there. So if you don't know the answer, any road will do. That's the problem, and probably one of the structural reasons why you're caught up in a business that's taken over your life, because you don't have a counterweight. You don't have anything else that says, well, this is actually what I want the business to look like. So, yes, that's the paradox. I don't really know what I want out of life, so I just let life happen, and then you're wondering how come you're not happy. Well,
Yeah. And do you find, I know for us that we do in-person retreats, and for me personally, I used to do all of my, what do I want my life and my business to look like, from home, from my office. And now I'm just like, I need to get out. I have to get out of my day to day. In fact, I don't really do any kind of visualizing, or figuring out or that strategy or really where I want to go. I just don't do it in my same day to day. And I've just found like getting out of that day to day can kind of help give you that 10,000 foot perspective. Do you find that as well?
absolutely. It's a little like I've asked at least 1,000 people this question on, would you go home tonight and ask your spouse this question on a scale of 1 to 10, how satisfied are you with our relationship in the last 3 months? And most of the men, when I pose that question, give me one of these. Oh, I don't know. I'm too scared to find out. I kind of know what the answer is going to be. And so what happens in lots of marriages where, what should we have for dinner? What do you want to do on the weekend? What do you want to do with the kids? And we're caught up in the routine of life and never sort of step up to get the contextual question of, are we happy? What does happy look like? And so you want to have some, I'm going to say, structural way, and maybe that's a once a year retreat or once a quarter reviews, but you need some kind of something to cause you to go out and say, what do I want? Because if you leave it to just kind of events, that never becomes clear unless you make it a systematic thing that you do.
Yeah, I agree. It really does need to be systematic. I used to think retreats were a waste of time, and then my clients started asking me to lead them, and then I started leading them. And then when I started getting out of my day to day and getting in a really safe space that, and looking inside myself, and things would come up that I was like, wait a second, I'm here to lead this retreat. I'm not here to work on, my mommy issues. And it would just be like, things would start coming up when you're out of the day to day and you put yourself in a beautiful space, a safe space, you're with other wonderful people. It's like the body can start talking, your soul can start talking, but when you're just cranked down in that day to day and surviving day after day, it's really hard to know what do you want. So if you're listening to this and you don't know, like, that's okay. Like, cut yourself some slack. It's a really, really difficult question to answer when you're in that day to day. But if you can intentionally take some time for yourself to get that perspective, I just think it can be a game changer. And I'm with you, John. I just now, because of our retreats, I end up doing this 2 or 3 times a year. And it really and truly is a game changer of just every, 3, 4, 5 months to just be like, I'm getting completely away, stepping out of that perspective and starting to really go inside and question and ask, but without judgment, just really getting curious about where you're at, what's making you happy, what's not making you happy.
I'd like to offer an example of why we need structure around the behavior we're looking for. And the example I'd like to offer is a guy named Sean Aker. He's a Harvard professor, written a legitimate New York Times bestseller. He's been interviewed on Oprah and Brené Brown. The guy's a stud. And he's a behavioral psychologist. He's an expert on human behavior. So he tells a story. He wants to learn to play guitar. So he put a guitar in the living room, but every time he went in the living room was the default action. He would pick up the TV remote. 6 months later, the guitar is dusty, hasn't moved. So then he changes the environment, creates a different structure. He took the batteries out of the TV remote, put it in another part of the house, 20-second walk away. Now he walks in the living room. What do you think the default action is? Pick up the guitar. It's the easier thing to do. And so that structural change caused the behavior that he was looking for. And so if you're not behaving in the way that you want, it's because something about your environment, your structure, your accountability, something is getting in the way of letting that happen for you. So make sure that your environment supports the behavior that you're looking for. And it's in that vein that going for retreats actually causes the kind of outcomes, the kind of behavior that you're looking for. It's the structural change. If you just say, I'll get around to it, it's never going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, having a business can be one of the most difficult things that there is. There's so many more decisions that we make in a day. There's people relying on us. I mean, if anybody listening has ever had to go through, how am I going to make payroll? I think if you've been in business for any length of time, you've been through the, how am I going to make payroll? How am I going to put out all these fires? How am I going to do all these things? And it's so easy to just get really, really overwhelmed. And I would love to hear from you, John, like, has this happened to you? And have you gotten to a place where you were overwhelmed? And if so, like, how were you able to start moving through that?
Yeah, well, something I'll share with you is at one stage of life, in retrospect, I've had 3 major depressions in my life, but the most recent of those started in late 2010 and resulted in 2011 in an attempted suicide, unsuccessful attempt at suicide, which was a byproduct of the depression that I was experiencing. And it was a very difficult period in my life. And the best thing I did for myself is I volunteered and got chosen to do a TEDx talk. And, excuse me, the TEDx talk, I took 22,000 minutes. So from PowerPoint, I discovered in the properties section, my PowerPoint that I used to write and develop and think about and rehearse, that PowerPoint was open 22,000 minutes, which I'll do some arithmetic, is 48 8-hour days. So in a 6-month span, that's how much time and effort I put into preparing for that TEDx talk. And what I realized, it was the best self-help I've ever done. If you want to talk about the benefit of journaling and reflection and having to present a story in a way that's compelling and to unpack all of that. And so it was kind of a happy accident, but that's where I learned the power of journaling or reflection. And I'd encourage anyone to pick up a journal or find some way to log what you're thinking in a way that allows you to process that thinking. Ultimately, I've had lots of therapy in life and none of it was that good or that effective, but having to do a TEDx talk got me very clear about what I experienced and what it meant. And in some way, as I told you earlier, I'm hardwired to be a teacher, and I've felt very compelled, very driven to tell a story and to, offer some insights or some teaching of what I got out of the experience and hope to pass that along in some way that's helpful to others.
Yeah. Do you feel like the journaling, I think journaling can be so powerful. I'm listening to a book right now called The Body Keeps Score, and it's for trauma. And he's talking about how the studies that they've done where people who journaled out their experiences recovered from these things, whereas the people who were not writing, not journaling, did not heal. And so there's such a power to just journaling things out. I've used a journaling exercise where I call it purge journaling, where you just purge everything out, but then you tear the sheets up. It's really and truly to let these things go. But I would love to hear from you, like, if you don't mind sharing a little bit of just your journaling process, and do you feel like did that help with the depression?
Well, one of the things I often make a statement about is if you're thinking and not writing, you're not really thinking. If you're thinking and not writing, you're not
Everybody hear
really
that?
thinking. And why that's true is if you're thinking, you're just having a swirl of thoughts and you actually are thinking. But what writing forces you to do is to crystallize, to clarify, to turn that sort of whirlwind into something that's coherent. And that's what journaling causes you to do. And so there's one version of it. I don't actually like writing that much, and I don't very much anymore, but I have one of these things, and this is a thing called a plot, and it sits on the back of your phone. And one of the features of this is I can do a brain dump in about 15 minutes, so it's a recorder. And it takes that wild collection of whatever I spewed and turns that into an AI product that comes with it and organizes that into something that then has meaning and coherence. And so day to day, routinely, that's how I capture it. I wouldn't say it's as good as journaling, but works for me in that it helps me, the phrase think out loud. When you're thinking out loud or just expressing out loud, that gets it out of the swirl in your mind. What I'd also say is that for anyone who feels anxious or overwhelmed or in some way or another, it's because your brain is not very good at keeping balls in the air. It's very bad at it, actually. And the anxiousness you feel is, am I catching all the balls? Am I making meaning out of all the balls? But as soon as you do a brain dump, your brain is then free to do the thing it's very good at. It's very good at solving problems. And as soon as you have it on a piece of paper or somewhere outside of your brain, it can then look at it in a way that actually processes all of that and turns it into meaning and into solutions and into things that can help. So you want to separate thinking from holding all those thoughts. And again, trying to keep all the balls in the air. Or if you're feeling generally anxious, it's because you're trying to get the brain to do something that it's not very good at. So find some way to externalize. There's a great book, Tiago Forte wrote a book called Building a Second Brain, and this is essentially the essence of that book. It's get that stuff out of your head someplace where you actually can do something with it. Get it out of anxious balls in the air into a place where you can actually process and turn it into solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. John, you said so many really great things. I'm going to back up just for a second. So for those of you, I just want to call out the journaling. It's a tool and use it. And I want to just throw out, like, use the tools that work for you. Like, all the tools work. They all work. But like, if writing, if it's something that you like feel called to do and it's something that you really love to do, then absolutely just like do it and carve some time out to do it. And there's no real right or wrong way. Like, you can do it however you figure it out that works for you. So John, I love that you have the recorder, it's on the phone, and that's how you do your brain dump. Beautiful. So as you guys listen to this, just like, it's the concept. Take the concept and make it for yourself. And if writing for you doesn't work a certain way, well, figure out a way that it does so that you can get the benefit of it. Because I am with you. Like, I know that for so many years, I just operated Anxiety, yes. Fear, yes. I called it driven. And really what it was is I was navigating in survival mode and I called it driven. And that was, just going all day long. And now I don't do that. Absolutely love writing when I need to use that as a tool. And I'm also going to add a little bit of like dropping down and into your body. I navigated up in my head most of my life. And when I slowed down enough to start breathing and dropping down into my body, taking time to journal and reflect, it was like all the information is there, but it is not there when you're up in your head spinning 100 miles an hour. And I used to like pride myself on being able to think my way through anything. And now it's just like, no, Jennifer, like that's not where all the real information is. When you sit with yourself and you journal and you reflect and you're really in your body, like the information comes through so differently than when you're just navigating up in your head all the time.
Yeah. So humans have a conceit. We have a conceit that we're rational beings with an emotional skin. And in fact, the opposite of that is true. The emotional part of our brain developed first, well before the prefrontal cortex developed. And what that means is your intuition knows well before your thinking brain can know. And we often ignore our intuition, or what you call into your body, because we think, oh no, I'm a rational being. Well, get over it. You're not. You're an emotional being who's got a skin on top of that called how I think about it. But that thinking part is an afterthought or a bolt on to the emotions that you're experiencing. There are some rational people in the world that come from sort of STEM backgrounds and technical kinds of backgrounds who have a filter that says, no, we're rational beings. And it's hard to get those people to see a different possibility. But I'm convinced that we're actually emotional beings, and that rationality just got bolted onto the side of it.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%, John. We are emotional beings, and when we try to cramp that down or not tap into those emotions, I personally believe that that's where a lot of the depression, the burnout, the overwhelm is coming from, because we're really not functioning the way we are designed to function, which is in the emotional body, our nervous system. Like those things always weigh in before your brain ever. I used to think my brain was so fast, and now I'm like, it is so slow. When you really start paying attention to your nervous system and your physical, emotional body, and you realize like the brain is last, it weighs in last. And then if you can really start to connect the dots between, wait a second, that decision I'm making, my nervous system and my body already weighed in. And if you're not listening to those things, you're losing 2/3 of your decision-making power by thinking that, oh, I just need to think my way through everything.
What I have learned to be true is most of the bad decisions or bad outcomes I've ever had in my life mostly was when I did not pay attention to my intuition.
Yes.
Most of the bad outcomes I've had in my life is when I did not pay attention or ignored or chose to give it one of these and went ahead and did something, or more often than not, went ahead and did not do something. And so I've learned that if my gut is telling me something, I better pay attention. It never gets better.
Amen. Like, agree completely. Like, listen to that gut, listen to that intuition. So, John, I know you work with business owners as well. One of the things I see a lot of is burnout. And I'm curious, I'd love to get your thoughts on burnout before we run out of time, because I'm having a lot of fun here but what would you say, like, what do you see? Do you agree? Do you see burnout a lot, or do you have any thoughts on burnout?
I do. So the kind of owners I work with generally are tradespeople. So they're electricians and plumbers, or they're professional advisors, so they're lawyers and accountants and so forth. What they have in common is they're very good and trained and skilled in a trade or a profession and not very good at business. And so they start off, and my hypothetical, a guy is a plumber and he gets a truck, and then he has a second truck and a third truck and a fifth truck and a sixth truck. And what happens is they still think of themselves as a plumber who happens to own a business. And that invariably leads to burnout, because what they actually discover is that they don't have the skills it takes to be a business owner. Because why? They've never had any training unless they have the natural instincts, but most people don't. So they get to a place where they are what I call an operator leader, which means every single thing that happens in the business requires somebody to ask that owner something. And then they say, how come I can't hire good people, or the people I have don't do good work, or I can't get the culture I want? And they think the issue is really about their people. And what I'd say is that the issue really is that they haven't put the structure into place in their business. And so the shift that what I call is moving from an operator leader to a leader owner. And what that means is that everything that happens through the business has to be done through someone else's capacity. So you no longer are in charge of how work gets delivered, how we acquire customers, how we do payroll. All of that work now is being done by somebody else. And what that means is most business owners really don't understand what delegation is. They think it's delegating a set of tasks, and what delegation truly is delegating authority and autonomy. It's a very different kind of delegating, and what that means is most business owners think, well, I have to trust the person, and that trust is relational trust. Can I trust that person to do what I need them to do? But that actually doesn't work in business, and then they wonder how come the last 5% of the job is never done to their expectation, or 10%, and it's because they have to switch from relational trust to structural trust. So let me give you an example. How does the air traffic controller know that that pilot and airplane is ready for takeoff? They don't even know the pilot. They might know him by name, but generally are referring to the airplane. Well, they don't trust the pilot. They trust the structure. What's the structure? Well, there's a pre-flight checklist. I'm going to assume safely, I think I can, that the pilot's done the pre-flight checklist, and that there's an order in which things are done. How long is a surgeon? It takes 10 years to become a surgeon. And yet surgeons, even with all that intelligence, all that training, all that, they'll forget occasionally, hey, we started with 30 scalpels, but I only counted 29 and we buttoned up the guy. What should we do? Oops. Well, that's why operating rooms have systems and structures and pre-operating, post-operating checklists. It's a systematic way of. So I have a client, and that client in a session told me, and it's an HVAC client, and that business put out 30, 50 invoices a week. And he would get interrupted 10, 12 times a week because somebody, often these service invoices needed a bit of an adjustment, or there was something wrong, and so 10, 12 times a week he was interrupted by this person doing the work. Should I make the adjustment? And hey, look, why do you do it that way? Why don't you just tell this person anything up to $250, just you have the authority to do it. I don't want to know about it. I'll check with you on Fridays. We'll review the ones that you've made. I'll never give you help, but I may coach you or ask you to do something differently next time. And now he doesn't get 2 a month. Well, that's the difference between being an operational leader or operational owner versus a leader owner. Now he's delegated authority and autonomy and created a feedback loop so that he knows when it's working well or when it's not working at the level that he needs. He gets a little bit of feedback, and now it's a once a week for 15-minute occurrence on his timing, where he's no longer responding all week, reacting all week, getting burnt out all week. How come nothing happens unless somebody bugs me about something? Well, it's a hard thing to learn, the shift that it takes to make that happen. And if you've never learned how to delegate, you're thinking about delegating in the wrong way. You're delegating tasks, and what you really want to do is delegate brains, or put a different way, you want to delegate authority and autonomy, and do that in a structured way so that you're not trusting the person, you're actually trusting the systems, the SOPs, the checklists, the protocols, the KPIs. You're not trusting the person, you're trusting the system that you've created, or that person's created, that you've both bought into. And as long as both, it forms kind of a contract that that's how work is going to get done, and that's how we know what good looks like.
I
That's a
love it.
long-winded
I love
answer
it.
to
I
your
love it.
question, but yeah, I see a lot of
Yeah.
burnout with business owners, and
Yeah.
they're exasperated because they really don't. They recognize they're burnt out. They recognize that what they're doing is not working, but they don't actually know, how do I fix this? I keep trying, but I'm bashing my head against the wall, and I never make any progress, and I don't know why
Yeah.
it's not working. And that's, that helplessness is where burnout starts.
Yeah, I agree completely. I've been there a few times myself, and I absolutely love everything that you shared, John. So insightful and so true that we've got to be able to delegate effectively. If you never learned how to do it, it's such an important skill. And I'm just going to toss in there before we have to close it out that if you have done that, you've learned how to do these things, but you find your behavior is still not lining up. This is some of the coaching that we do where we go deep. We go into the nervous system because I found that I had some safety rules in there that even though I knew how to delegate, I still wasn't doing it. And even though I knew better in my mind, like the behavior didn't line up with it. And everybody talks about this invisible ceiling. Well, spoiler alert, the invisible ceiling is your nervous system of how far it thinks you can go before you're no longer safe. And so I just want to throw that out there too, because like for me, it was like I knew the stuff, but I wasn't doing it. And when I started really going deep and going internal and realizing that I had some of these safety rules that were getting in the way. For example, if you have a rule of, your role, if you learn to prove yourself worthy and you did that by performing, so I would hire people that couldn't do the job. And it kept me in a role where I felt like, well, if they're
Sure.
always coming to me and I always have all the answers, well, then I'm safe. And I had to get rid of that. I had to repattern that. And then I started hiring people that could do the job better than me. And then delegation got so much easier because
Exactly.
me. So it started with me. Me, myself, and I
Yeah,
was the
so
problem.
most business owners come to me and think they need help with the business systems, tools, and structure in the business. But here's a dirty little secret. All business coaching is personal coaching in disguise.
Yeah.
All business coaching is personal
All of
coaching.
it.
So you talk about it in nerves. I think about it more in terms of mindset and skills, leadership, communication, delegation, but it starts with mindset. And
Yeah.
and so if I could reframe it, you're not a plumber with a business, you're a business owner that happens to do plumbing. And that is a
Yeah.
very significant shift in identity. And when you're ready to make that shift, you then can think about how you go about doing things in a different way than you currently are. You're not a plumber anymore, you're a business owner. Just happens to be a plumbing business.
Yeah, agreed. And guys, everybody, gals, everybody listening, this is why you need a business coach because it helps so much to get out of your head, out of your perspective, work with somebody who has a different perspective, and that's going to shorten your curve. I know everybody's in a hurry to do it all, and that's fine, but if you really want to shorten the curve and you want to really and truly be successful and have a business that gives you the life that you want, work with somebody who can help you get there. Get yourself a business coach. So, John,
Experience
thank
is
you
a
so
great
much for
teacher,
being here
but
with me.
let me just make one more comment. Experience is a
Yeah.
great teacher, but it's expensive and takes time. So get some help so you can accelerate the learning. It's actually a form of leverage.
Yeah, it really, really is. I love it. John, would you mind just sharing where people can find you when they say, hey, I need a coach? Go check out John.
Well,
Where can they find you?
my website is w5coaching.com. I talked to you or mentioned I'm a proponent or believer in the Socratic method of teaching. And Socrates had it, the best way to help somebody is to help them figure it out for themselves. And that's what I do as a coach. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, and that'll help you kind of externalize and crystallize what you're thinking. And what are the 5 core questions? Who, what, when, where, why? W5. Easy to find.
Very nice. I love it. You guys, W5 Coaching, please go check out John's website, check him out. We will put that information in the show notes as well so you can find it. John, thank you so much for being here with me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me as a guest.
You are so welcome. All right, guys, that's it for today's show. Lots of great, we'll call them truth bombs today. I hope you picked up on a few of those. And at the end of the day, just do one thing. Even if you don't implement everything you heard today, just pick one. Pick the one that resonates with you the most and do something with it so that you actually get a result. That's it. Get out there and have a happy, productive day, y'all. Bye. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love to have you join us inside Freedom Builders, my coaching community for entrepreneurs who are ready to slow it on down, do the inner work, and build soul-aligned businesses that are happy, productive. Everything you need is linked below in the description, or you can visit my website at jenniferdawncoaching.com. I hope to see you there.